Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. We will start the webinar in 5 minutes, and meanwhile, we will play the Urban Act video that illustrates the program. Thank you.
Gazing upon our world from a distance, it appears peaceful and calm. But the reality is far different. The repercussions of climate change are approaching us all, and we all contribute to this impact. By 2050, projections indicate that over 3 billion people will reside in various urban centers in the Asia-Pacific region alone. Urban activities are a key contributor to climate change. Cities are responsible for 75% of global CO2 emissions, with transport and buildings among the most significant contributors. And since 2012, the Asia-Pacific region has collectively been responsible for more than half of global greenhouse gas emissions yearly. The repercussions of climate change are imminent and befalling us all. Several Asian countries are among the top 10 countries most affected by climate change, with the Philippines ranked the 4th, India ranked the 7th, and Thailand ranked the 9th. It's time to act, and we have a joint responsibility to address climate change through urban development planning and design guided by climate data. That's where Urban Act comes in. Urban Act, or the Integrated Urban Climate Action for Low Carbon and Resilient Cities project, is a regional project that aims to support the transformation towards low carbon and resilient urban development and contribute to implementing each partner country's nationally determined contributions and the Sustainable Development Goals. Funded by the International Climate Initiative, or ICI, commissioned by the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action, or BMWK, Urban Act is implemented in 5 partner countries: China, India, Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand, with a duration spanning 5 years from 2022 to 2027. We aim to achieve 4 critical outputs. These outputs include improving the institutional environment for climate-sensitive urban development, using evidence-based, inclusive, climate-sensitive, spatial and urban planning, identifying project concepts for urban climate action investment, and enhancing knowledge through regional networking, exchange, and learning. Our collaborative partnership comprises the Deutsche Gesellschaft für internationale Zusammenarbeit GmbH, or GIZ, as a project leader, and the international partners consisting of the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, or ESCAP, United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific, or UCLG ASPAC, the University of Stuttgart, and TU Dortmund University, and national partners in each of the project countries. To promote and showcase a sustainable integration of climate change into urban development, Urban Act implements its support in 14 pilot cities across the 5 countries, recognizing the unique context of the partner countries and aiming to improve the country's specific policies and regulatory frameworks. Furthermore, we engage in joint operations with the Indonesia-Malaysia-Thailand Growth Triangle, or IMTGT, implementing initiatives in 6 cities within the IMTGT sub-region. We are all standing on the edge, and every decision and action we take today will shape our future for generations to come. It is not just a choice, it's a collective responsibility that falls on each of our shoulders. It's time for us to unite and journey towards low-carbon, resilient urban development. Join us in the Urban Act, Joint Action for Climate-Friendly and Resilient Cities. We are stronger if we are together.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Climate Conscious Cities Urban Act webinar series. Today's session is entitled Ensuring Municipal Climate Action, Best Practices in Municipal Development Plans and Climate Action. My name is Alice Siragusa. I'm the Sustainable Development Advisor at ESCAP, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. We are thrilled to have more than 250 registrations from the Pacific and beyond for this webinar, highlighting the significant interest in this crucial topic. This webinar series is part of a broader Urban Act project that has very interesting and key objectives, as you have seen in the video. The first one is to enhance understanding of integrated climate action for low carbon and resilient cities, but also to raise awareness of key innovation in urban climate action. Moreover, the program aims at building partnerships within Urban Act and relevant organizations and showcasing best practices for the Urban Act project partners. I'm also happy to announce that Urban Act has launched recently an e-learning course on SDG localization and climate action synergies. You can enroll for free using the link shared in the chat or scanning the QR code that you see on the screen. As I say, this is a part of a series of webinars, and in 2025, we will continue this series covering different topics. To decide the topics for the next webinar, we also want to hear your opinion. So please fill the survey accessing the link that has been shared in the chat box and also that you see on the screen, because we want to hear from you what are the interests and which topics we should cover. As participants, you notice that we asked you to provide some questions during the registration form. So thank you very much for all the people that submit these questions. But you can also use the Q&A function in the chat in this webinar to post questions for the speakers and also for the other participants as well. These questions, of course, help us to deliver better webinars and to make the topics and the speakers delivering presentation as much as possible fitting for your interest. Please note as well that this webinar has been recorded and will be available together with the presentations in the dedicated website. As I said, feel free to use the chat box during the webinar to interact with the other participants, but please, again, use the Q&A function to write your question and or to vote someone else's question. The certificate of participation will be available after filling the survey feedback, as usual. So let's go to the topic of today. Of course, many participants probably enroll because they're interested in local actions for climate change. And municipalities in the Pacific region are increasingly acknowledging the urgency of integrating climate action into their development frameworks to build sustainable, low carbon, and climate resilient communities to meet nationally determined climate targets. However, to achieve meaningful and lasting climate outcomes, cities must carefully consider how to design and implement effective climate strategies within their municipal frameworks. So this webinar will explore the critical importance of embedding climate action in these development plans across the Pacific, and will highlight best practices, innovative strategies, challenges, and also successful cases to showcase how this can be done. The session presents effective models for integrated climate action into local frameworks, offering also practical recommendations to strengthen policies, improve governance, and foster also community engagement. So I cannot wait to hear from our speakers of today, their experiences. Now I would like to welcome our first speaker, Shruti Narayan, Managing Director of Regions and Majoral Engagement and Regional Director for South and West Asia for C40. And what we ask Shruti to talk about is how C40 is supporting innovative and scalable solution in the region, and what are the common barriers that cities face embedding climate action into the municipal framework. So without any further ado, Shruti, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Alice. And so grateful to be here. Thank you for inviting me and setting the context so strategically on why we need to work together in scaling climate action in cities. Next slide. So just a quick, like a quick introduction. C40 is a network of about 100 cities that are leading on climate action around the world, representing about 800 plus million citizens. And this is a map showing the way we are, diversified around the world. We represent about 25% of the global economy. And, for us, it's important that cities deliver on tangible data-driven climate action. Next slide. So, one of the key things of being a member of C40 is committing and delivering to the 1.5-degree target of the Paris Agreement. We already probably know that we are far away from this. We are probably at 3 degrees or 4 degrees on average. But I think it's really important that we have measures and systems and frameworks in place so that we are able to understand how cities can look at their trajectory of GHG emissions. Next slides. And why we really think that this is important. We know that cities actually occupy 2% of the landmass around the world, but are actually vulnerable to about 80% of the climate risks. I'm sure among the people who have dialed in today and have participated, I'm sure each one of us has experienced a climate risk, not once, but many times in our living life in the last year or in the last couple of years. So it's very critical for cities to start taking action, because cities are where the battle of climate action will actually either be won or lost. Next slide. We really believe, as a sort of a lead up to this, that climate action planning is very, very critical, because it's one method which links cities through different cross-sectoral actions and ensures that cities are able to really understand and view the lens of equity, diversity, and economic prosperity when they're able to measure and take very sort of, clear actions on their greenhouse gas emissions. C40 has actually developed a new framework. We had one last year, and I know many of C40 cities have joined and will be presenting in detail later. But C40 developed a climate action planning framework that has now been revised and updated based on the United Nations Secretary General's call for action that links to integrity matters. Next slide. So what led us to develop the city's climate action transition framework? We started our journey very early on when we brought cities together and we said that we need to deliver and align to the Paris Agreement. That led us to develop a climate action plan that followed an approach, a 3-tier approach, which required the cities to take a greenhouse gas inventory, which set a baseline and help the cities in understanding what kind of trajectories they're going to have if they continue to work on a business as usual. This allowed us to really work with cities to develop pathways of reduction, which were tangible and target driven. We really believe that if you don't, you can't manage what you can't measure. As a follow-up to this, we have been working with cities, and we are very happy that almost all our cities have now published a climate action plan. But when the UN Secretary General published the Integrity Matters, we decided that it's time for us to update this climate action planning framework to make it a little bit more impactful and include urban consumption, really understand how cities can phase out fossil fuels, include adaptation targets, and have very sort of strategic frameworks of monitoring, evaluation, and reporting, because it's critical that cities develop the capacities on their own to be able to track their emissions, so that it's not like they're doing a climate action plan every year, but they are able to have frameworks and dashboards. And one of the most critical things that we included was climate budgeting. And I will talk about these in my subsequent slide. Next. This slide gives you an example on what we believe is a new framework and an updated and a more ambitious framework for looking at climate action. It includes, like I said, urban consumption. It ensures that we're looking at climate governance, which is all about mainstreaming climate as a part of cities' actions. It's really time that we don't look at climate action planning separately and governance separately. It's important that cities now, based on every dollar or every sort of amount that they allocate and spend from their budgets, have climate integrated. The CCTF is available on our website, and I'm not going to go into the detail, but please look at our Knowledge Hub to download this guidance document. Next slide. Now, this is giving an example to what I outlined early. If you see, these are two trajectories that I'm just putting this for a notation. We're going to have C40's, a star city, Quezon City, who we work with very closely. Mayor Joy is an absolute sort of, advocate around, on climate action. So, this sort of lays the trajectory on how we start working with cities, and we then look at sectoral impacts of how the cities can get to close to net zero, which also looks at prioritization and an analysis of financing, policy, and the collaboration needed. It is really critical that cities have these kind of discussions which are cross-sectoral, because transport has impacts on waste, water has impacts on energy, and it requires all departments to come together and look at these kind of data-driven maps to understanding their targets and high impact actions. Next slide. All our climate action plans are now really built around the understanding of climate risk and how cities build resilience. We really understand that without this, we cannot address climate action plan. Climate action planning cannot just focus on mitigation anymore. Cities are the best place to identify the actions of risks and build resilience, putting people at the center of the planning exercise. And these actions can be very simple, like what kind of pavements do we need to put, how do you look at urban heat island, what kind of cooling measures have to be in place, and these are very, very critical, and they look at cross-sectoral issues. These are just some examples from Kuala Lumpur, that are sort of indicating how we work with the city to looking at an action and detailing that out. Next slide. We also really think that it's important that these actions are built through integrated planning. We have been working with cities across the world in really being able to, tangibly outline the core benefits and the synergies so that they're able to actually raise financing. It's very critical that the true cost of climate action is then, established. Otherwise, it leads to malinvestments and conflict of interest between different stakeholders if we do not come together on a sort of an integrated platform to discussing these different measures that are really critical. Next slide. And we also understand that, cities have so many competing priorities, and the need for climate action prioritization is very, very important. We have developed many tools that help cities in working on climate action prioritization that involve different stakeholders coming together, where they are looking and accounting for variables like what is the budget allocation, how much greenhouse gas emissions are being saved, what kind of core benefits are these, and what amount of time some of these measures required. This helps the city in really being able to establish what they need to do immediately, what could be a medium term, and what could be long-term actions. Next slide. This is just showing, a city in India, Bangalore, where you can just actually, it's an animated slide. So if you can just kind of get to the whole slide. Yeah, thank you. So this is just showing that how, we worked with the city in a very sort of integrated and involved way in looking at the mapping. And, at the end, we came up with 20 actions that the cities really needed to do. So it became an important exercise. Next slide.
You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. And this is just showing that, climate action planning is a very engaged exercise, and it requires the city ownership. C40 works and brings together many, many stakeholders so that they are owned by the city. So these are just examples of how we engage with the stakeholders. Next slide. And then for us, the next step after a climate action plan has been launched is the mainstreaming. We look at two aspects. One is on the budgeting side, where we look at climate budgeting. We worked with about 12 cities globally, where they're able to integrate their climate actions as a part of their budgetary processes. The second one is urban planning. And there was a very interesting, statistic in the video which said that, in 2050, there will be so many new cities and urbanization. cities in Global South and in the focus countries of Urban Act are growing. New cities are getting added, and urban planning integration becomes a very, very important tool for the cities to integrate climate action in it so that they are able to really react quickly and ensuring that they're able to protect green spaces and, blue-green infrastructure, but also have, all the different departments integrated. Next slide. I'm not going to go into the detail, but we have all of these examples on our website. I highly encourage all the cities that are online today that they look at climate budgeting as a very, very important tool for integrating climate action as a part of their budgetary processes. Andrea, Alice, I don't know how much time do I have, but I can maybe just quickly go to slide number 20 in the interest of time.
Yes, and then if you can wrap up,
Or maybe I can just do slide 18 and stop there.
Yes, because anyhow, we will make available the entire presentation to participants, so the participants can then go back to your example.
Yeah, so just the slide 18 and then. Yeah. So, okay, if it can't come, but okay, I'm just going to stop at outlining the key outcomes. Number one, it's important that CAPs are developed in a data-driven, evidence-based way. And CAP are integrated in regulations and planning. Yeah, this is the slide. Because otherwise, the climate action plans just become academic reports. The second point is that it's very, very critical that it's a part of the blueprint framework of how cities developed, and that the city looks at very key implementation projects as an outcome of developing the CAPs to implement them, and then gets into the continuous cycle of doing monitoring, evaluation, and reporting so that they're able to consistently, constantly, and collaboratively update their CAPs in an equitable way that's including the vulnerable and create economic opportunities like green jobs and include all stakeholders that are involved. I'm going to stop here. Thank you, Alice, for being strict about timekeeping. I appreciate that.
Thank you to you, Shruti, and I think you were in a few minutes really to give a very comprehensive overview of the challenges, but also all the work that C40 is doing, but as well to connect to very practical example. So thank you very much for that. If you have a question, please for Shruti, please put it in the chat box, and then we will come back to them in the Q&A part of this webinar. So now we will move actually to one city that also cooperates and is part of C40. So I invite Andrea Villaroman, head of the Climate Change and Environmental Sustainability Department of Quezon in the city in the Philippines, to talk about their experience. And in particular, I think it would be important for us to understand how the city has taken climate action and how has matched the priority with the municipal development plan, and how has engaged the community in this process. So Andrea, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I proceed with my key discussion points, please allow me to first introduce Quezon City. Next slide, please. Quezon City, located at the heart of metropolitan Manila in the Philippines, is the most populated city in the Philippines and the third in terms of land area. It has 3 large parks that total about 83 hectares and an additional 322 community parks. It has the largest, widest, and expands green spaces in the metro, establishing the city as the capital's most sustainable ecosystem and also its green lung. Like all urban centers, our city grapples with environmental challenges arising from high population density, heat island effect, and ever-increasing resource demands. Quezon City faces these challenges head-on with a holistic and innovative approach. Guided by international and national policies, we empower and mobilize local communities to take the lead, ensuring our initiatives are comprehensive, sustainable, and attuned to diverse needs, delivering tangible benefits to our citizens. Next slide, please. Our Enhanced Local Climate Change Action Plan, or our Enhanced ESCAP, or what others C40 cities called CAP, is aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement, the UN SDG goals, and our national policies, while also making sure that it is tailored to local circumstances and priorities. The Climate Change and Environmental Sustainability Department, which I head, lead the implementation of the enhanced ESCAP, while various city government offices execute specific strategies and policies. In 2019, our city took a significant step by declaring a climate emergency through a city council resolution. This declaration enabled us to allocate up to 13% of our annual budget to climate-related initiatives. While this was a substantial commitment, we are proud to have further integrated climate action into our city government operations, now allocating an average of 22% of our budget to these crucial initiatives. Next slide, please. Our plans are designed to actively represent vulnerable sectors and communities, demonstrating our commitment to an inclusive and responsive governance model. Policy proposals are reviewed by various city council committees, each conducting extensive public consultations with relevant stakeholders to thoroughly consider all viewpoints and implications. For example, our calorie labeling initiative involved the Education and Social Services committees to ensure broad and effective implementation, despite being primarily a health issue. The People's Council of Quezon City, comprising over 5,000 civil society organizations from sectors such as women, youth, the elderly, businesses, academia, persons with disabilities, and the informal workers, actively represent citizens in crafting programs and legislation. They provide indispensable expertise and knowledge to the local government. The creation and active participation of the People's Council, I believe, is very unique to Quezon City. Next slide, please. This synergistic approach is also evident in our Climate Action Planning Program, which began with a strong commitment from the executive branch of the local government. Grounded on a clear understanding of our evidence base, we collectively tailored our roadmap towards ambitious and aggressive climate action together with the stakeholders that we serve. Next slide, please. Meanwhile, for implementation, we take on a multi-sectoral approach and joining local communities to partake in climate solutions identified in our plans. A clear example of this is the Circular Economy Program, which aims for a 50% reduction in waste generation by 2030. The Trash to Cashback program, for instance, encourages waste segregation by allowing residents to earn environmental points for recyclables traded, which eventually becomes redeemable for groceries and vouchers for utility bill payments. Since 2021, we have organized over 1,000 trading events, collected over 450,000 kilograms of recyclable waste, and then benefited nearly 1 million residents through strong private sector partnerships and community engagement. Another successful initiative is our refilling program with Greenpeace and Ripple X, addressing sachet waste by transforming community stores into refill hubs for household items in reusable containers. Initially starting with 30 stores, it has expanded to over 1,000 hubs, offering refills at lower prices and preventing over 1.1 million pieces of sachets from entering landfills. Next slide, please. At the heart of this lies a fundamental truth. Environmental and climate policies, or any other policy, cannot exist in isolation from the communities they are crafted to serve. While top-down policies provide a fundamental framework, it is the bottom-up efforts of local committees that breathe life into these blueprints and ensure their success on the ground. In blending top-down directives with bottom-up initiatives for environmental and climate policy, we must acknowledge that climate change transcends local boundaries. Addressing it requires reaching out to the national government and other local government units. National and regional governments also play a critical role in creating enabling frameworks. This framework should empower local action by providing resources, streamlining permitting processes, and establishing clear national goals. This top-down support strengthens the foundation for local efforts. Local communities, in turn, need to engage actively in the policy-making and implementation processes, contributing their knowledge and solutions. Meanwhile, businesses, non-government organizations, and academic institutions must also become integral partners in our climate strategies. Their expertise, resources, and innovative capabilities can drive the development and implementation of sustainable technologies and practices. Collaborative efforts between the public and private sector can lead to groundbreaking solutions. By committing to a unified approach, we can overcome financial, technical, and social barriers, ensuring a greener and more resilient future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for Andrea for your presentation, and congratulations on the effort that Izan has put in implementing such successful strategy. So let's move on to our last presentation for today. I'm very happy to introduce to you Adam Tafan Firdaus, environmental engineer expert of the Department of the Environment from the city of Malang in Indonesia. And we invite him exactly to illustrate the experience of Malang City in integrated climate action into a broader urban development planning. And in particular, I know that there are some specific elements from specific sectors that he would like to highlight. So without any further ado, Andrea, the floor is yours. Sorry, Adam, my apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Hello,
yes, we can hear you. Go on. Sorry, pardon.
Could you hear me clearly?
Yes, please.
Okay.
You can start. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Alice. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to share Malang City's journey. It's a truly honor to be here today as part of this important discussion on municipal climate action. Our presentation today is titled Malang City's Climate Journey, rooted in climate and local context, aligned with the global goals. So for today's occasion, we will share it's about our ongoing efforts, the challenge we face, and the lesson we continue to learn. We hope Malang's journey inspire the collaboration and provide insight into how municipalities can align local actions with global climate objectives. Please, next slide. Okay, so let me begin by introducing Malang City and our climate action plan. Malang City is located in East Java province, Indonesia, with a population of over 800 residents and with additional 200,000 students and commuters. We are known as a tourism city and also the city of education, covering 111 kilometers square. So yeah, Malang also, like in other cities, face several challenges like rapid urbanization, resource constraints, and also increasing the climate risk. In response, Malang has committed to tackling this issue by aligning with national and provincial climate goals with the Indonesian National Development Contribution, and also we align with the national policy requiring local governments to inventory and mitigate emission. And also we have governors regulation that requiring the local governments to actively contribute to the emission reduction targets. And of course, Malang Climate Action Plan is the heart of our response. It's not just a document. We are trying to make it living framework that involves to meet our city specific needs. So we already did GHG inventory to measure emission and set baseline. And so we already make assessment for climate risk and vulnerability assessment. And for the projected emission reduction in 2023, we hope we could reduce 30% of emission reduction from our baseline that for focus area with renewable energy, energy efficiency, and transportation. And in the make of this climate action plan, we have Malang's climate change task force. And also we have support from global partnership for technical expertise, capacity building, and alignment with international frameworks. Please, next slide. Okay, so yeah, although we did make some progress, we certainly still face some challenges. The urban growth pressures that strain our resource and infrastructure, and sector-specific challenge that need targeted solution like in waste management and energy. And also governance challenge is honestly often slow down implementation, and also we have big resource and capacity gaps like from funding and investment, and financially finally, climate risk also continue to pose significant threat to our state's development, like floods and soil landslide. And yeah, we're trying to navigate this challenge. So we are trying to adapt a transformative framework with focusing on three pillars. Community empowerment, we are trying to actively involving residents to foster ownership and participation. And measurable solution, tracking progress to ensure all objectives are accountable and scalable. And also the strategic collaboration, we are trying to have partnership across sectors to combine expertise, resource, and innovation. So yeah, this is our iterative innovative strategy to implement and refine our climate action plan. Please, next slide. And yeah, partnership are critical to success. And I think I would like to introduce what this synthesis is. So synthesis as a living lab foundation, we are actively shaping the policy and also the strategy in Malang City for circular economy and climate solutions. So lastly, we already assisted Malang City in securing an 11 million USD budget for waste strategy project in collaboration with World Bank, and also Ministry of Affairs, where we like to try to maximize our value in climate solution and circular economy. Also, we are trying to develop a model for community-based waste management that is low carbon and also can actively shaping the sustainability of Malang's future. Please, next slide. So I think I will share one specific example of how Malang translate the climate action plan into the action. So we have this principle. It's called Plutonia Resik Rejekine Api. It's in Japanese language. It's in Japanese language, and it's mainly meaning circular city, prosperous community. So we're trying to make a collaborative circular economy framework in local context, where it's come from the challenge that we have a very vast amount of waste every day. And also the over reliance on landfill, even though Malang is have limited land for it, and also it's very hard to develop a very advanced technology because the investment and also because of regulation and also the limited public understanding and also participation in waste recycling effort. So from that challenge, we are trying to make this framework where it's like a very systematic approach. So we have in the upstream, we will engage actively the community, behavioral change, and also in the intermediate, we are developing many composting and recycling hubs. And so at the downstream, we now developing waste energy solutions and also low carbon technology and policy and funding support. So the output from the transformative framework is we are trying to refine our waste management hierarchy, where we like to achieve many proportion of waste treatment in every sector. For example, in reduce waste recycle, now from 700 ton waste per day, 32% of them is recycled and composted. And then for the waste to energy, it's now we are from next year we will build an RDF plan for 120 tons per day. And of course, for final disposal, we have the sanitary landfill that ensure the protection of environment, mainly in emission reduction. So from this hierarchy, we are trying to make a reflection like an iterative alignment with our climate action plan. So we are trying to reduce the emission from the sector because it is contribute to 14% of our total emission. And also we are trying to promote circular economy, and also we are trying to reduce in our landfill dependency, and also we believe that community engagement and education is a really important things. And also, of course, all of this is integrated and also aligned with the national policies. So this is one example how we make an actionable climate action plan. Please, next slide. Yeah, so these are lessons learned from Malang's growing movement. The first one is we believe that the comprehensive climate action plan is really necessary because in our climate action plan, we have GHG inventory, climate risk and vulnerability, and also mitigation actions that a robust climate action plan provide the foundation, and importantly, it is data-driven solution. And the second is try to leverage local wisdom, like us, Kota Resmi Apik. It's really at the heart of our culture, because we believe that the cleanliness and also the environmental sustainability is part of our investment in cities development. So I think local identity is foster trust, participation, and ownership. And then we can start with scalable solutions. For example, like small community-led projects. It could be used for to develop broader strategies. And so the grassroots effort is really scalable, and in fact, it's really good the long-term resilience. And then we could like trying to make a transformative framework, like combine community empowerment, the solutions, and also the collaboration to drive the systemic change. Because we need an integrative framework that could drive the systemic change, and so translate the climate action plans into actionable steps. So it's not just the document. So we are trying to make it specific and implementable. So we will have clear goals and so actionable steps to achieve measurable outcomes. And then, of course, align local action with global goals, like the Paris Agreement and also each country's indices. I think that's all from my presentation. And I hope that we share our progress and challenge, and also lesson learned can inspire, and also we can receive feedback from all of the participants here. Thank you very much, and thank you, Alice, for the time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Adam, for sharing in this presentation an overview and also very sectoral but important experience developed in Malang City. So thank you very much to all the speakers. Now we go to the Q&A section of the webinar. So maybe I kindly ask all the three speakers to switch on their camera so the participants can see you live reflecting on the question. I've seen many questions coming in the Q&A chat box, so thank you very much. Maybe I will start with Quezon City, because there are a couple of questions that maybe can be grouped, and they are related to the citizen engagement in this in the development of the local plans and the climate action. So there are a couple of questions that maybe I will ask Andrea to reply. One is how the communities provided input, how the results have communicated back to the communities. There is a question also on how this periodic multi-stakeholder discussion has been developed. So maybe, Andrea, if you can give a little bit more of details on that specific element of your presentation, and then we move on to the next speakers.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that question. Well, specifically for our climate action planning process, it was very deliberate on our part to include various stakeholders from doing the evidence base up to the planning of priority climate actions. So this was introduced to us by the C40 Cities Technical Working Group. And it has become effective in ensuring that all the concerns of our stakeholders are embedded or included in our climate action plan. And how do we relay this back to our community members? As mentioned a while ago, we have a People's Council representing various sectors, which includes women, youth, the elderly, and even persons with disabilities. So these sectoral groups are part of our local special bodies that normally have general assemblies in the City Hall. They also conduct community workshops at the ground. And they even have forums where all of the stakeholders are joined together and discussing some of the concerns of the community. I think from at least the context of Quezon City, since it is institutionalized in our governance framework, we are able to reach out to as many community members as possible.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for your reply. There are a couple of questions in the chat box that I think can be both for you and from Adam. So I will just read them to you, and you can prepare your answer. But I will go back maybe to Shruti as well, because there was one very technical question that I think is worth to reply to. So there is one question on the local leverage, local wisdom on climate action. So I was wondering if you had experience in involving also indigenous people into this process, and if so, how this could be done in the future. And the second one is also on the timing of developing this plan. So how much time did it take for the city to actually, gaining awareness, raising the awareness in the local staff, probably in the city staff, and then develop this plan and integrated this plan into the local development action. So this are for you. You might think about the reply, but for Shruti, one question is on the how you or harmonize what are the suggested methodology for the climate budget. I've seen that you reply you reply to this question in the chat box, but maybe Shruti, you can maybe explain what are the basic principles that are behind this methodology that C40 is proposing, very briefly, so the colleagues can also have an understanding on what are the background for this methodology.
Absolutely, and I'm going to be really brief because this is, sort of an interesting and complex subject. But primarily, if you were to simplify, cities, we all know that money drives us, right? Money drives the delivery. We need money for climate. So C40 basically, used the example of Oslo. Oslo was the first city globally that launched a climate budget. And they have now in their, I think, third or fourth year of launching a climate budget. And Norway also as a country now is looking at that. The intent was that how do you take the climate action plans and the actions that are coming out of these plans into your budget, right? Because it's important. So it's not always about just looking for financing, right? But cities need to get their house in order and allocate money or understand how they're allocating money and know what kind of allocations are being, given to these, actions that have come out of the climate action plan. And in Alice, the sort of the first principle is that we cannot now look at governance or cities' operations with a separate lens on climate. It has to become one, it has to become mainstreamed. So the intent is that there is a step-by-step approach in looking at what are the different departments, what kind of budgets they have, how and what kind of actions are owned by them, because climate action plans are cross-sectoral, right? But they have different departments that may be parts of certain elements of that, right? So bringing all of this, these departments together and reviewing their budgetary processes and then launching that. C40 has developed a step-by-step guide, which I have posted on the chat. And, we're going to have many webinars that are going to be coming up next year. So please reach out to me if you're interested and you're not also a C40 city. I know, my friend Andrea here, who I just met in Quezon City, we're going to be kind of working together with all our C40 cities, but also with other cities in giving that knowledge to them. And the last point that I want to make is that we completely understand that this is not one size fits all. We are just giving a guidance to what a framework could be, but we completely understand that urban governance, accounting processes, departmental allocations are different from different cities. And we want to make sure that this is localized and owned by the city governments, and it's not kind of like a standard that's being enforced.
Yes, thank you very much, Shruti. And definitely we agree that there is no magic, formula, and the frameworks definitely support the cities, but then there really needs to be a local implementation and adaptation also to the national rules, regulation, and practices, trying to improve what has been already done. So I go back to maybe Adam now, try to reply to the questions that came on the integration of local and traditional, wisdom and practices in terms of climate action, both in mitigation and adaptation, and also on the time frame, how long it takes to implement these changes or to start this journey. And also there is one specific element that maybe I would like to go back in this to Adam as well, if there are any specific regulation that maybe need to be revised to implement this action. So Adam, I will go to you and then back to Andrea.
Okay, thank you, Alice. So maybe, and first, thank you for the questions. And to understand how local wisdom has influenced on climate strategy, we have to understand the importance of recognize that the incredible diversity of Indonesia. So we are a country with more 1,000 of ethnic groups, with each of it has a distinct tradition, also philosophies and ways of living. And Malang, of course, is part of East Java, deeply rooted in Javanese culture. So we are really values harmony, collective responsibility, and also respect for the environment. So we are trying to use, how people speak this context in everyday living, because somehow like the language of climate it's really too corporate, or it's really too government or too fancy, right? So we are trying to use the words, or trying to looking for a gap, which or how people can understand climate action or climate strategy ways better. So kutone rasa kerja kini apik, it's just really simple terms. It's just like if your city clean, you will have prosperous community. Why? Because Malang itself is a tourism city. Of course, if our city have really vast amount of waste and it's not really treated, no tourists will come to us. And also, we believe that we'll make it as a foundation of the economic growth. So then our city also have that real collective action, because now we still have that values to support each other. And then, yeah, we are just trying to share like that we are immensely proud of our cultural heritage and deeply act in the for the climate action. So I think that's just we are trying to looking for the simple terms and also simple action for the community. And so for the second question is about the how long, correct? Yeah. Okay. So for how long, for example, the climate action plan in Malang is drafted in 2020. It's supported also by GCOM, GIZ, and so many international organizations. And then we also have this climate task force. It's from 2018, I believe. Yes, it's started from 2018. And then from there, for example, in waste management sector, because we already have the guidance, the book, we are trying to connect the dots between what is the goal of global climate action and also what we can do. So it just we are trying to connect the dots, right? And then from there, in 2020, we received the support from KfW and the bank from Germany and also from Indonesia's government to build the sanitary landfill that I mentioned about. And then in 2022, we also received the support from GIZ to make low carbon waste management in a city level. It's like making a draft policy and also making more holistic framework. And last, we also now receive the funding from World Bank, because we already identifying, oh, there's the gaps that that we need to work on. For example, waste to energy, and also I will maybe answer a question about the waste to energy. I think it should be addressed. For example, waste to energy in form of refuse derived fuel or RDF. It's basically a mixed waste. So in waste management hierarchy, you can see that there is reduce, recycle, and also energy recovery. So we are trying to maximize all of the value of waste. So we are trying to sort of mixed waste and send it to a cement industry as substitution for coal. So yeah, our country is deeply rely on coal, and now we are trying to change. We are trying to improve our condition. I think that's how our timeline. I think those all the question, or is there any more, Alice?
No, I think you provide already, some answer, and you put especially into the context of also your collaboration that I think enhance and increase the capacity in Malang City. So maybe I will go to Andrea, try to also to reply to this question, but in terms of time frame. What was the time frame? How your journey has been, and maybe you explained already how the participation of the local community really provide important inputs and the elements that you take into consideration. I was wondering if maybe you can also include in this reflection some tips maybe on the challenges that you face to incorporate not only the staff or the city priorities, but also this relationship with the local communities. Engaging with the local communities and have a real participation is sometimes challenging. So if you can include also some reflection on that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, the development of our climate action plan was caught in between the COVID-19 pandemic. So we started in 2019 building on our evidence base. And then as soon as we have already identified our priority actions, that's when COVID hit, which means that we have to move to online consultations, which then was not very how do you term it? It's not very usual for us to do online consultations. We're so used to collaborating with people, doing the work on the ground, talking to our community members in their areas. Instead of doing that, we have to move to online consultations using Zoom or Google Meet. That is not very familiar for some of our local community leaders. So I think that's the first challenge for us. When it was time for us to build on the different priorities, we have to make do with what is available at that moment and transition to online consultations. And I think in terms of tips on how to overcome the challenges, what was very critical then was the involvement of various city departments. So in developing our climate action plan, it was not only my department doing the work. It's actually several different departments, say from the economic sector, where the local businesses are represented. We also engage institutional groups that are familiar with what we are doing in our priority climate actions. We also touch base with the economic sectors that are mostly MSMEs. These are companies that have been badly affected by the impacts of COVID-19. So with us doing several consultations, not only at the community level, but also involving the departments from different sectors, that makes it very easy for us to come up with our priority list. And also, it also allows us to get the commitment of the different departments in terms of allocating budget within their department operations, because it's also very crucial. Our department is in charge of driving climate action in the city government, but in terms of infrastructure, it has to be within the budget, say, for example, of the city engineering department, the city architect department. So without their support, these budget allocations will not be put forth in our climate financing. I think that's also critical at the level of our management committee. These priority actions are also elevated from their perspective, given the limitations in our budget. So I think in summary, it's really working together with different department heads, different city government offices, but also making sure that the vulnerable sector at the community level are involved every step of the way.
Yeah, thank you very much, Andrea, for your answer. There are the last two questions that I think we can try to take in the chat box. One is on actually combine the two plans, avoid duplication and strengthen synergies. And I think that maybe resonates with what you were just commenting. So I don't know if you or Adam wants to suggest that, or I see that Shruti, reply to that, or I see that Shruti is trying to answering the question in the chat box. And the last one is on your perspective on local determined contribution, which is part of the city climate targets as an alternative to national determined contribution at COP that are considered often too general and less measurable. I don't know if you have views on that, so I will open the floor to the three of you who wants to reply. On both questions.
Sure. So
Please
I can come quickly on both of them. The first one, fundamentally, I think everything should be integrated. There is no need for duplication of efforts and having many, many plans. It's important to know that the plans are just means to get action on the ground. So the energy needs to be spent on what is coming as an outcome of these plans and the delivery on ground, rather than developing these plans again and again. So wherever possible, as much as possible, one needs to integrate everything that is happening in the most comprehensive and strategic way that is possible. And that's kind of what we promote and support. On the second part, Absolutely. And I think I did post sort of a response to one of the questions that was talking about the integration of the Paris Agreement, the COPs, and all of these things. So, one should be quite excited. The last COP launched this initiative called CHAMP, which was the Coalition of High Action Multi-Level Partnership, which primarily was about this. It basically was a call to action to national governments as they're revising their NDCs to become and be more engaged with cities on ground that will actually be sort of, responsible for delivering a lot of the NDCs that get created, right? Because cities kind of take the burden of what sort of is determined. So this is now the new NDCs that are due next year would require this. They require the national governments to engage and work on the LDCs and the cities' climate targets and bring them as a part of the NDCs in alignment and coordination so that it becomes an integrated effort between the national governments and the local governments.
Thank you very much, Shruti, for this reflection. I don't know if Adam or Andrea wants to pick up on the other ones. Otherwise, I don't see you, so please let me know. Okay, I think we are okay. So thank you very much. And actually, this last point that Shruti made is a great hook for the invitation to the next webinar that we will have on the 10th of December. The topic will be COP29 and the future of new multilateralism for climate action. So I will invite everyone to, have a look at our social media and register for the next webinar. I want to thank again all the speakers and the participants for this very informative and interactive session. And I really hope that all the materials and the examples that the experts share with you will be useful in your different location. I think we missed one comment on the Pacific Island and the state in the Pacific, but this definitely is something that we will try to cover more in the next webinar as well. The presentation and all the materials of this webinar will be available online as usual, as well as the recording of this webinar itself. As I mentioned before, this webinar is part of the Urban Act project, so I would like also to thank the partners who support this effort. And I remember that if you want a certificate of participation for this webinar, you have to fill out the survey that you can scan on the screen, and you will receive a link to reply to a few questions, and then you will have the certificate. As a final thank, I would like to thank my colleague in the background who made this webinar possible, and I see you very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.